Hello and welcome back to the FEZ Show. We have some very interesting topics to delve into today off the back of yesterday's news. But first, just a gentle reminder that if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet and you're really enjoying the content, then just hit that red button. Look at it, it's so adorable. Anyway, we have a fabulous lineup for today's show. Joining me all the way from Germany is the one and only Tobias Bluhm from eFormLD, and returning again from the FEZ crew is Jack Pickering. Morning, Tobias. Morning, Jack.
Good morning.
Morning.
It's great to have you on the show, especially Tobias. Obviously, on the podcast all the time, I don't normally actually get to see your face until it's race day and race weekend, so it's actually great to see you. How have you been?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. Keeping as busy as possible. It's really weird. There's no racing going on. There's no university going on. So I'm sitting here and trying to keep busy doing whatever I possibly can. It's weird times, but I'm coping. How about you?
I've been well. Obviously busy with these shows and really enjoying them and putting them together. So, and we've got such an exciting episode today to talk about, because the big news that dropped yesterday, Tobias, was the esports. And obviously we've been discussing over the phone, and everyone here at FEZ and eFormLD, we've been discussing that it's coming. We knew something was coming in terms of esports, and finally it's dropped. Like, what did you make of the announcement? Obviously, I'll go through it a bit. Obviously, a different race format. We're not doing the 45-minute race system. It's more of an elimination process where, a driver is eliminated and then the top 10 will battle it out in the last lap showdown, effectively, to try and win the race. And we've got most of the drivers confirmed, which is great. So what did you make of the news?
I really like the idea. I mean, FE has always sort of tried to keep in touch with esports. Remember 3 years ago already, seems like yesterday really, but 3 years since the Vegas E-Race happened. So yeah, FE has always tried to sort of stay in touch with sim racing really. So it's good to see them embracing it again now that everyone seems to embrace sim racing all of a sudden. We have so many different leagues popping up here and there. Media outlets doing sim races, the drivers themselves getting together and sim race, and now FE is doing their own sim racing league with 9 virtual races, and as you said, most of the drivers competing in that. I really like the idea. Of course, we have to wait for how they eventually realize that concept, because surely some of the viewers remember what happened 3 years ago with the, I'm sorry to say, but the shambles that was the Vegas E-Race. So yeah, we'll have to wait, of course, but the idea sounds good.
Yeah, which makes, like, we've discussed the Vegas E-Race before in terms of the problems they had with the Ollie Pakala situation, with the fan boost, and he was, trying to get that 25 grand, I think it was, for third place, and which he got, but then he obviously lost because through no fault of his own, because the fan boost actually never sort of went away from him.
I think that was much more. I think he lost 100 grand on that.
I thought it was 100 grand for the winner, but I can't remember.
I think it was 200 for the winner out of the $1 million jackpot. That, I'm not sure if that still is the biggest sim racing event to date, but at the time it surely was. It was the biggest event for sim racing. And yeah, you had rigs failing. I think 2 drivers weren't able to compete just because their rigs failed. And then the fan boost not being tested properly beforehand. It was a bit messy. And Formula E, I'm not sure if it's still the case, but back then Formula E sort of was, it wasn't the most popular championship in the sim racing community. And I'm interested, of course, to see how it goes this time. But I think it was $200,000 for the winner back then. And
Yeah.
50,000 for third place. I don't.
Yeah, I can't remember the figures, but yeah, it was around that ballpark. But it's still a lot of money for a sim racer to then lose through no fault of his own. Which then I suppose, Jack, is probably why it's really good that they've learned from that and they've decided that this Saturday's race will be a test one. So it won't go to this championship. Obviously, 9 races over 9 weekends, but the first one is a test race, just to make sure that there's no bugs, there's no, sort of any faults in the system, just to, make sure everything works.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think they would have done some testing like over the last couple of weeks in terms like what tracks they want and implementing all the new season 6 cars. But yeah, you don't get a proper test run until you get all the drivers in one lobby and just go. So yeah, it makes perfect sense to do that. And so yeah, I'm actually quite looking forward to it, because for Formula E is a little bit crazy anyways. Add esports into it, it's going to be mental. So yeah, and the way that they're doing it with the whole battle royale kind of way, I think it's going to be quite exciting. It's going to be a better version of that elimination qualifying Formula One tried to do a few years ago. So
yeah, what I wanted to say, Jack, to you actually was, what do you think of the format? Because obviously, if I look at the F1 streams that they're doing, it's basically a 45-minute race, and Formula E is a 45-minute race. So do you think, obviously they've gone for this new style of elimination process, do you think, we could have maybe have done like a normal race, a normal 45-minute race with our drivers and kept it very similar to an FE style format? Or do you like that they've completely changed the game, new format, try and make it more exciting for the fans? Or, is a 45-minute race just not that exciting for a Twitch stream, and an elimination process might be more engaging for fans who are watching the race via all these social media platforms?
Well, yeah, with having a 45-minute race, as we see with Formula E, that's still really exciting. But the thing is, Formula E always strive to be different. So I'm not surprised that they have decided to create this new format for the esports races. And so yeah, I think the new format, I think it's going to be a little bit more exciting. It's going to be a little bit quicker, because I have a very short attention span. I stay alert for the Formula E races, but for 45 minutes is quite a long time for me to stay alert, if I'm completely honest. So having these, I'm not sure how long the races will be, but having people drop out through the race, I think it will kind of keep me alert and just keep everyone kind of on edge to see, okay, who's going to go next, and also it's going to mean that the driver who will be in last place at the time is more likely to take more risks to try and stay in the race a little bit longer.
I suppose it depends on how clean these races are going to be, because the only problem I see with an elimination process is if the field is close together, it's great, because you're likely going to see those battles. If there's massive crashes and then someone's 10 seconds off, and then there's like a 3, 4, 5, 6 second gap between each driver, then you're not going to get that elimination battle, Tobias, in terms of actually seeing that action. And then it just feels like a normal race, but we're just getting less and less cars. So I think it's a good idea, but it'd be interesting to see how it works on Saturday, because if it is close, and there could be a great battle, especially for that 10th place to get into that final lap showdown, it could be amazing. But if they're all really spread out because of crashes and so forth, then it might not have the appeal that Formula E intended.
Yep, that's the risk that you're talking to, and rightly so. The battle for 10th position is going to be key throughout the race. It doesn't matter if there's a good fight for 13th position, because in the end they will be disqualified, or will be DNF'd, maybe not disqualified. And then I feel that the final lap shootout might be a bit little in terms of weight that goes into the race. We'll have to see. I have no idea how the format pans out. It's interesting, surely. New formats always are intriguing, and I really enjoy watching, I don't know, WTCR, and then moving on to Formula E, and then moving on to the F1 format. So different racing series, obviously trying different race formats. And this is yet another new race format, which is worth a try. And sim racing is suited perfectly for DNFing drivers and taking them out of the race just by zeros and ones. So yeah, it's worth a try. But I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes as well.
Would you have liked, Toby, to see more than just that one lap battle? Because obviously you get to the top 10, you get that fight, but even if the top 10's spread out, even if it's close, let's say it's close, you don't have, you'd probably want 1, 2, maybe 3 laps tops to sort of allow that person who was in 10th to maybe either catch up, just in case he spun and he could be the quickest driver on the field, whoever that person's in 10th. But if he's come through, he's fought his way up in an amazing battle, made it to the final lap, but then he's got no chance of catching up or making a difference in the final lap, it'd be a bit of a shame. It's like a small anticlimax. I feel like you want, the grand final of that race, in a sense, to hype it up a little bit and have those 1-2 lap battles, just to give it a bit more excitement, because one lap it'll be over very quickly.
That's what I'm afraid could happen, but I have no idea how it will feel in the end. Luckily, we have the test run this weekend, and we will have a better feeling and better understanding of how the races feel and how the concept and the entire format works after this weekend. That's a risk, of course. If the field is spread out, the final lap with 10 drivers is arguably going to be a bit dull, possibly, but we'll have to wait for the test race, and possibly it's completely the opposite, and the final lap shootout with the 10 drivers is the best thing that they could have chosen. I just don't know yet.
Yeah, it's very true. There's so many questions I have, and I've written like a few down, Jack, in terms of like what I want to find out. And obviously, I don't know how much you know about this as well, Jack. You're probably in the same boat as me, but it said there was 2 parallel challenges on rFactor 2. Now, how I read this was because I think the sim racers will be involved in the main race, but at the same time, the way that the press release has been written and so forth, it looks like that, we want to have all the Formula E drivers in one race, and there may be some sim racers and some guest influences from like popular YouTube vloggers that they normally like to put in. So I don't know if there's going to be 2 different races that we're going to be watching, or if everything's going to be put in one. And if everything is put in one, what on earth could this other challenge be?
Well, yeah, I think I think that's my understanding as well, that that all the Formula E drivers will be in one lobby, and then there'll be some sim racers and some like influencers in another. I assume that they'll do it a bit like how the race All-Star race have been doing, because they've had two heats and then one grand final. So I'm not sure if it's going to be the top 10 from each and then 20 cars in the final, or whether it'll be done some other way. I am expecting to see some influences. We've seen Will NE do some
F1
not the GP series, and has he also done a virtual race? I can't remember.
I think so, but yeah, we'll move into that topic very slightly, actually, because I wanted to, because obviously like the virtual Grand Prix series that Formula 1 have been running, I've had people like Ben Stokes, they've had golfers in it, I can't remember who it is, the name has escaped me.
Ian Poulter.
Yes, and but they've had those different people from different sports actually enter the event, which we'll talk about that in 2 seconds. But what I want to talk about is the tracks. Now, obviously, we're racing on R Factor 2, which I am delighted that we're racing on R Factor 2, mainly because I have it, and maybe I can now have a go at trying to get and try and qualify for these events. But I doubt that will happen. But the thing is, I'm confused about is I don't know what tracks we'll be racing on, and we're going into Saturday as this test run, and we're going in blind as journalists. We're going in blind as spectators and fans because we don't know what to expect. We don't know where we're racing. We don't know how the format's really going to work. We just there's so many unknowns, and then we're gonna just have to listen to Jack Nicholls and Dario Franchitti sort of walk us through it the best they can. And I'm wondering how much they know.
Not complaining.
Yeah, but I'm wondering how much they know in terms of what is actually going to happen. Obviously, they're going to feed it through, but their understanding of it, when they're going to find out when it's going to happen, it might be quite interesting to us, because obviously you know as well as me that the official tracks that they've got are the Hong Kong and Monaco circuits. They also made that fake Leicester track, which could be used. So we're doing 9 races of this. So I'm wondering where else they could go. Are we going to be potentially seeing Formula E cars take to F1 tracks that are on the game that that Formula E might use?
The thing about R Factor, either R Factor 1 or R Factor 2, is that you can add mods really easily, or DLC packages, and possibly we could see Formula E releasing a big DLC in the next week. Not that I've heard of anything, but that's a possibility. And then we get tracks like Marrakesh, for example, or Diriyah, or Berlin. They are already there as a mod, as a private mod, and you can drive Berlin already, but it's not an official FE licensed circuit, and that's what's still missing. So there are official Studio 397, I think,
Yep.
are the ones doing the game. There are official tracks, of course, and FE could run, say, Brands Hatch Indy on the game, or some shortcut of Silverstone, or some version of the Norris Ring in Germany. We all have to wait. Possibly FE could release a DLC with official FE tracks, and then just simply race on Formula E circuits. But I'm tapping in the dark there, and no idea.
Yeah, to be honest with you, if they did release a DLC this week, I know what I'm buying. Because Boom. Even though I've got, as you said, like they've modded. Like the great thing about R Factor 2 is that they are all there. All you need to do is technically buy R Factor 2. You could put all the tracks there. You have to pay a bit more money. It's about like 13 quid, I think, for the Formula E pack with all the cars, Hong Kong and Monaco all together. But for 13 quid, and then if they made another DLC for another £15 with all the actual tracks, then you've got all the cars and all the tracks. I feel sorry for the person who has. I think it's one person who has modded every single Formula E track on R Factor 2, because then he's like, oh, well, I don't need to mod anymore, technically. Unless Formula E do some new tracks in the future, let's say. But Jack, if let's say they do that, I really like that idea from Tobias, but if they were to release a DLC to make sure it's all on official Formula E tracks, does that sort of indicate that they were slow on the uptake of sim racing? And I've heard from people who used to work at Formula E in the sim racing side of it when they were doing the Vegas e-racing, is that they simply just ran out of money to really push forward sim racing and maybe even do more games and make more stuff.
Well, yeah, I think as Toby alluded to, the whole Visa Vegas E-race, it went well, and then in the end it didn't, with the whole with the whole Ollie Packer having fan boost on the entire time in the second car, and then having to be demoted from first to third after the race. And so yeah, I think they kind of shied away from it from that point because they weren't really happy with how that had gone. And then but no, I'm very happy that Formula E are now back in the game, as it were. yeah, I do think they were a little bit slow to cotton on with this. Admittedly, this only really took this only really became not a big thing a month ago, because all the Formula One teams have gone to Australia ready to race, and then on the Thursday of the Australian Grand Prix, it kind of seemed apparent that they weren't going to race anymore, and that's when everything started kicking off, and yeah, esports has been quite big for the last month or so. But I am very happy that Formula E are now doing this, and I will assure you that if they do create a DLC with all the tracks and all the cars, I am buying R Factor 2 once we finish this show.
Yeah, it'd be amazing. So what I want to sort of move on to, because obviously we've alluded to this in previous episodes, Jack, but Tobias, it'd be great to have your insight on it. Obviously, we talked yesterday about Max Verstappen doing the esport thing for the V8 supercars. Now, we don't have a full Formula E grid at this precise moment. We've only got 14 out of the 22 drivers, so there are some spaces. Now, I'm looking at the F1 drivers here mainly because you've got the likes of Lando Norris, Latifi, George Russell, Charles Leclerc, who are doing this charity stream already, and they're trying to raise £100,000. I think for the national, there's a foundation that they're racing for that will that they'll give the money to help with the COVID-19 battle. So because Formula E are using UNICEF, and then the money made from this is going to go to UNICEF to help fight COVID-19 and to help support children. In the battle for this pandemic that we're in. So I have a feeling that attracting drivers like that are in Formula One, and those are huge influences anyway in terms of Twitch streamers when you think about Leclerc and Norris, that could be huge for Formula E in publicising the series and publicising the event as well.
It could, yeah, but it could also backfire. Drivers are, if you think about Kyle Larson, for example, not as severe, of course, as Kyle Larson did, but drivers talk very quickly once the microphone's on and rarely think about what they're saying, which is great for us because we enjoy getting the insight of how the drivers really are. We learned that with Kyle Larson. But regardless, it could also backfire because imagine Lando Norris complains about how boring FE is, and imagine George Russell saying the cars sound terrible. All the old points of criticism we've heard about Formula E, that could possibly happen. That said, I agree that they have a huge potential audience. There are no indications, I'll have to add that as well, though, that they might join the influencer field or whatever this part of the group is called. For now, I'm completely happy with all Formula E drivers competing there. But it would, of course, be awesome to see Lando Norris and Antonio Giovinazzi and Charles Leclerc joining Formula E for a race, of course. But there are no indications that they will join.
Yeah, Lando Norris says he's a professional Twitch streamer now, so that surely makes him an influencer. He said, I can't be called an F1 driver anymore. I'm a professional Twitch streamer, he says, which made me laugh. So, but the interesting thing, which I sort of want to move on to now, is obviously we've got the 9 races, and it would have taken us up to June 13, which would have been a week before the Berlin race. But Tobias, big news coming out from Germany yesterday of that the large events bans continuing to the 31st of August. And I think you weren't the only country. I think Belgium did something very similar as well, which obviously puts the Berlin E-Prix, which Agag had on the 21st of June, said it was really hopeful that, something could happen and we could do something there. But it looks like it's very unlikely now that we will be racing in Berlin on the 21st of June.
I agree, yeah. Agag wasn't really hopeful. He was keeping it in as a sign of hope. So there's a difference. But still, FE still kept Berlin on the scheduled date of the 21st of June in the calendar up until, officially it's still in there. Of course, any sort of confirmation is still pending from the FIA and Formula E, and they haven't responded to any of our emails yet. But it seems as if the Berlin race won't be happening, at least not on the 21st of June. as you said, the measures in Germany were extended, of large gatherings being prohibited until the 31st of August. And what counts as a large gathering and large event is defined by each German state. So there are 16 German states within Germany, and Berlin being one of them. And there's a difference from one state to another. For example, when it comes to opening schools again, there are 16 different solutions for opening schools. Some students go to school next week, others start on the 4th of May. Some A-level classes go first in other parts of the country. What's it called? The first type of school you're in?
Primary school.
Primary school, of course, yeah. Sometimes it's the easiest things. Sometimes primary school students go to school first. So it differs from one state to another. And the same will apply to the definition of what counts as a large event. Regardless, I don't think we'll have an event with spectators. That should be out of the question now, especially if you look at FE's narrative in the past couple of months. They are always acting according to the recommendations of local governments and authorities. And yeah, therefore, I think there are only two options for Formula E in Berlin. Either behind closed door race, you'll have to think about travel restrictions then, of course, because I mean, we have Porsche, Audi, BMW, and Mercedes from Germany, but also for them, plenty of mechanics and engineers and PR staff, just generally staff, is coming from abroad. And you'll have to think about keep travel restrictions in mind, of course, as well. All the other option would be postponing the race or suspending and scrapping it altogether. So it's not looking great for the Berlin E-Prix in June. Of course, still waiting for any official word on it, but it seems very, very unlikely that we're racing in Berlin in June. Possibly in September. As I said, the measures end on 31st of August. But it's still so far away. I mean, it seems so far away. It's already April, but still 5 months is still a long way away. And yeah, no idea, to be honest.
It's amazing that, because obviously Formula E, in terms of the calendar, because obviously to Tempelhof Airport is a fabulous solution, because obviously it's in the city, it doesn't close any roads, so we could technically race there in September. I think Formula E were hopeful that they could possibly move the race back to August. Hopefully London was in the XL, maybe the Nightingale Hospital at the XL was being packed away at that time. And we could maybe have done a race there in August, or even pushed it into September, which obviously September is available for Berlin at this precise moment. But it's interesting now that the calendar is being pushed further and further back. And obviously, Gags talked about this Asian leg to potentially end the season, but he didn't really comment on that further. So I think, Jack, it's really interesting now. Formula E it's going to be a tight battle to sort of get races in. But what I found interesting is this permanent track thing. Because, even for London, he said we could race elsewhere. That's what James Regal said in the press conference yesterday. And he didn't just say in London, he meant the UK. And we were obviously talking about, Donington. Obviously, they've got the headquarters there. You've got Silverstone. You could use a short layout. There's other tracks that we could potentially go to, where we could just race on a permanent circuit rather than street circuits just to finish the championship.
Yeah, and if the situation clears up in Spain, all the Formula E cars are located in Valencia right now, so we could go over there for a race, but yeah, I think from a Formula E standpoint, they will want to have Berlin, because I think Berlin is the easiest of the last three races on the calendar to actually set up, and then actually go to there. So yeah, as I alluded to in, I think, the first episode, I think the ideal of what they'll want is maybe Berlin in late September, and then Valencia in late September, early October, and then that that would be their ideal, but obviously, yeah, we don't know. This is a fluid situation, so it's right now we don't know what's going to happen. I think Donington is a good solution, and I'm not saying that because all I need to do is go up the M1, but also I do like the idea of Silverstone because that's 20 minutes away from me. So yeah, I think we do need to finish this championship, but where we go for it, I'm not sure.
And then finally, just to finally add to Tobias, obviously, it makes an impact on season 7. This because at the beginning, Formula were like, all right, we don't really want to race in October because we've got, I remember Dilbag Gill saying actually that, testing's locked in Valencia for like October 12th to the 16th this year. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we'll still be probably finishing off this season. So then the time limit that they had to sort of, get the cars ready for season 7. Obviously, well, I say that they could carry on with this season's car or make the new car if they want to make the new car with this new 2-year cycle. So, you might see season 7 pushed back into January, February. There's talk of doing testing in Donington in November, so get ready for sub-zero temperatures. But they'll need to do pre-season somewhere, and I don't know how warm it is in Valencia in November, December, possibly warmer than Donington. But whether or not they can do the race in that time, because I know Valencia has the MotoGP that it's got to set up, so maybe it won't be able to do the testing at that time if, racing is resumed in those sort of closing months of the year.
I don't think MotoGP will be too much of an issue. Formula E manages to cooperate and on the operational side with F1 in Monaco already. So the Formula E event usually happens a week or two before the F1 event. So I don't think MotoGP will be too much of an issue in Valencia. But you're right. The current plan is to have pre-season testing at some point in October. Surely that will have to be pushed back if we end the season in September, maybe late September. That will be especially an issue because it's a difference. It makes a difference whether you're ending the season on the first weekend of September or the last weekend of September. So yeah, officially the current plan is to test in the second week of October. That might be pushed back, as you rightly said, and then we're supposed to start season 7 in December, but that could also be pushed back. There are no indications yet, of course. Formula E is still worried about how they're finishing this season. They still have to organize 2 more events to crown a champion, and I think as soon as that happens, they will try to end the season ASAP. Current plan is to have 6-7 more races, possibly double headers, mostly then, but just try to finish the season with the least effort possible and just forget about 2020 and move on. It's a good thought. I haven't really thought about having the 2021 Formula E season instead of the 2020-21 season. It might happen. Everything seems to be pushed back right now. We had the tender for batteries and chassis for the Gen 3 Formula E car being pushed back. So possibly now with the Gen 2 Evo being delayed by a year, Gen 3 might be delayed by a year, especially thinking about manufacturers is key there. So Formula E will really have to be flexible with the Gen 3 on the manufacturer side. It's a lot is still uncertain about the future. And decisions will have to be made on a day-by-day basis, sadly.
Yep, and we'll just have to wait and see. It's a massive wait and see game. But boys, we are out of time. It's been an absolutely amazing episode. I really love both of your insights. Tobias, thank you so much for coming on this morning.
Thank you for having me on. It's been great fun.
Jack, as always, a pleasure. Thank you for being on.
Thank you.
And Remember, if you really are enjoying the content, especially this episode, I think it definitely deserves a like. Come on, it deserves a like. And if you really are enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button below. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you tomorrow. You've been watching the FEZ Show. Goodbye.